A few weeks back, I was unpacking boxes into our lake cabin for my son while he was serving overseas in the military when the HOA president decided to call 911 on me. Why? She said, unapproved furniture and suspicious activity. The part she didn't expect? That one phone call would lead to my family banning the HOA from ever stepping foot on our property again. My name is Dave Martinez. I'm a 45-year-old veteran, having served 20 years in the Army before retiring to work as a consultant for military families. My wife, Sarah, is a nurse at the local VA hospital. We have two sons, Michael, 22, who's currently deployed overseas with the Army, and Jake, 19, who's in college. We own a small lake cabin about 2 hours from our main home. It's been in Sarah's family for generations, and it's Michael's favorite place in the world. Before he deployed, Michael asked if we could move some of his belongings into the cabin. His fishing gear, his old laptop, some books, and other personal items he wanted to keep safe while he was gone. We agreed and planned a weekend trip to the cabin to move his things. The cabin is part of a small community called Pine Ridge, which has an HOA. We've never had any issues with them before. We pay our dues on time, we follow the rules, and we mostly keep to ourselves when we're at the cabin. The weekend we planned to move Michael's things. Sarah and I loaded up our SUV and drove to the cabin. We arrived late Friday night, too tired to do much more than unlock the door and collapse in a bed. The next morning, we started unloading Michael's belongings and carrying them into the cabin. We were in the middle of moving a box of his books when a woman marched up our driveway. She was probably in her late 50s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and expensive clothes. She was carrying a clipboard and looked like she meant business. "Can I help you?" I asked, setting down the box. The woman sniffed disdainfully. "I'm Karen Thompson, president of the Pine Ridge Homeowners Association. Who are you, and what are you doing here?" I looked at Sarah, then back at Karen. "I'm Dave Martinez. This is my wife, Sarah. We own this cabin. We're moving some of our son's belongings into storage while he's deployed." Karen looked at our SUV, which was still full of boxes. "You can't just move things in here without permission. This is a gated community, and we have rules about moving trucks and temporary residents." I felt my temper start to rise, but I kept my voice calm. First, this isn't a moving truck. It's our personal vehicle. Second, we own this cabin. We don't need permission to move our own belongings into our own property. Karen flipped through her clipboard. "According to our records, this cabin is owned by Sarah Martinez. Are you Sarah?" Sarah stepped forward. "I am. This is my husband, Dave. The cabin is in my name, but it's our family property." Karen made a note on her clipboard. "Well, our rules state that any property changes or moves need to be approved by the HOA board. You didn't get approval." I laughed. "We're not changing anything. We're moving our son's belongings into storage while he's serving our country overseas. We're not asking for permission to do that." Karen's face hardened. "The rules apply to everyone. I'm going to have to ask you to stop what you're doing and leave the property until you get proper approval from the board." Sarah stepped between me and Karen. "That's not going to happen. Our son is deployed. He asked us to store his things here. We're doing that today. We're not leaving." Karen pulled out her phone. "If you refuse to comply, I'll have to call the authorities." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you threatening to call the police on us for moving belongings into our own cabin?" Karen dialed her phone. "I'm calling 911. There's an unauthorized move happening at cabin number 7, and the residents are refusing to comply with HOA rules." Sarah and I just stood there, stunned, as Karen spoke to the 911 operator. She gave them our address, described us as unauthorized individuals who were refusing to leave private property, and requested immediate police assistance. When she hung up, Karen smirked at us. "The police are on their way. I suggest you pack up and leave before they arrive. It will go better for you if you cooperate." I pulled out my own phone and called our friend, Mike, who's a lawyer and also a veteran. I quickly explained what was happening. Mike was furious. "Don't let them touch anything, Dave," he said. "I'm on my way, and do not leave the property. If you do, it could be seen as admitting you were in the wrong." I hung up and turned to Sarah. "Mike's on his way. He said not to leave." Sarah nodded, her face pale. I can't believe she called 911 on us. 20 minutes later, a sheriff's car pulled into our driveway. A deputy got out and approached us. Karen immediately walked over to him, pointing at us. "Officer, thank you for coming," she said. "These people are trespassing on private property and refusing to leave when asked." The deputy looked at us, then at Karen. "Is that true?" I shook my head. "No, officer. We own this cabin. We're moving our son's belongings into storage while he's deployed overseas. This woman, Karen Thompson, is the HOA president, and she's trying to stop us." The deputy looked at Karen. "Do they own this property?" Karen hesitated. "Well, technically, it's owned by Sarah Martinez, but they didn't get approval from the HOA to move things in." The deputy sighed. "Ma'am, this is a civil matter, not a criminal one. If they own the property, they have a right to be here. The HOA can't ban them from moving their own belongings onto their own property." Karen's face turned red. "But they're violating HOA rules." The deputy shook his head. "That's between you and them. It's not a police matter. If you have a dispute, you'll need to take it up in civil court, not call 911. Just then, Mike pulled up. He got out of his car and walked over to us, shaking hands with the deputy. "Hey, Tom. Thanks for coming out," Mike said. The deputy nodded. "No problem, Mike. What's going on here?" Mike explained the situation, how we own the cabin, how we were moving our deployed son's belongings into storage, and how Karen had called 911 to try to stop us. The deputy looked at Karen. "Ma'am, you abused the 911 system. This was not an emergency. You could be cited for misuse of emergency services." Karen paled. I was just trying to enforce the rules." The deputy handed her a card. "Here's my card. If you have any more issues with these folks, you'll need to handle it through civil channels, not by calling 911. Do you understand?" Karen nodded, looking defeated. "Yes, officer." The deputy left, and Karen turned to us. "This isn't over. The HOA board will hear about this, and there will be consequences." Mike stepped forward. "Actually, Karen, I think it is over. You see, Dave and Sarah are protected under the Service Members Civil Relief Act." Karen looked confused. "What's that?" Mike smiled. "It's a federal law that protects military personnel and their families from legal and financial actions while they're serving our country. By interfering with their right to access their property and store their deployed son's belongings, you're violating that law." Karen's eyes widened. "That's not true. I was just enforcing HOA rules." Mike shook his head. "No, you're trying to prevent them from using their own property. That's a violation of the SCRA. And by calling 911 and falsely reporting them as trespassers, you committed defamation and possibly filed a false police report." Karen looked like she might be sick. I didn't know." Mike handed Karen a card. "This is my card. I suggest you have your HOA lawyer contact me. We'll be filing a formal complaint against you and the HOA for violating the Service Members Civil Relief Act." Karen took the card with a shaking hand and walked back to her car. She didn't say another word as she got in and drove away. Sarah and I stood there for a moment, stunned by what had just happened. Mike put a hand on my shoulder. "Are you guys okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, just shaken up. I can't believe she called 911 on us." Sarah wiped a tear from her eye. "Our son is over there fighting for our country, and she treats us like criminals for moving his things into our own cabin." Mike's expression hardened. "She's not going to get away with it. We're going to make sure of that." Over the next few weeks, Mike filed a formal complaint against Karen and the Pine Ridge HOA for violating the Service Members Civil Relief Act. The complaint was also sent to the State Attorney General's office and the Department of Justice. The HOA's lawyer contacted Mike, trying to settle the matter quietly. But Mike wasn't interested in a quiet settlement. He wanted to make sure this never happened to another military family. The case went before a judge, who ruled in our favor. The judge found that Karen and the HOA had willfully violated the Service Members Civil Relief Act by interfering with our right to access our property and store our deployed son's belongings. The HOA was ordered to pay $50,000 in damages and issue a formal apology to us. Karen was personally ordered to complete 100 hours of community service at a local VA hospital. But the best part? The judge also issued a permanent injunction banning the Pine Ridge HOA from ever again interfering with our use of our property. The injunction specifically stated that the HOA and its agents including Karen, were prohibited from entering our property or contacting us about HOA matters without our express written permission. In essence, we had legally banned the HOA from our cabin. The story made local news, and Karen became the face of HOA overreach. The Pine Ridge homeowners were furious with her for costing the HOA money and damaging the community's reputation. At the next HOA meeting, Karen was removed as president, and the new board issued a public apology to military families in the area. As for us, we finished moving Michael's belongings into the cabin. When he comes home on leave next month, he'll find everything just where he left it, and he'll know that his family stood up not just for themselves, but for all military families who have to deal with HOA bullies while their loved ones are serving our country. The lesson? Power doesn't give you the right to disrespect those who serve. And when you mess with a military family, you're messing with people who have the law and the entire military community on their side. Because some of us have sacrificed for this country, and we'll be damned if we let some HOA president treat us like criminals in our own home. Subscribe for more stories about HOAs getting what they deserve.